How old were you 10 years ago? Feels young, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How old will you be 10 years from today? Feels old, doesn't it? A lot of times we don't like to hear that 10 years older because it just feels old. It seems because it's in another decade. But you are in a certain phase of your life, and you are in a different phase then than you are 10 years from today. And basically, you're in a different phase of each life. You're in phase at 21, 31, 41, 51, 61. They're different phases. But what I've begun to discover over the years is that there are certain predictable feelings, certain predictable things that are going on in each decade. Each and every decade has certain things that are pretty predictable, actually. And those are the things I'd like to share with you today. Today, I'd like you to, what I call, listen up and listen in. What I mean by that is, when I get to your decade, listen up. Listen very carefully. But listen in to the other decades as well, because when I start with the 0 to 10, that may be your children. That may be your younger brother and sister. That may be a neighborhood child or a child in your Sunday school class. So when I get to your decade, pay special attention, but listen in to the younger generations as well as what your parents are experiencing, or even your grandparents are experiencing, okay? I'd like to start by explaining that I put an S word in each decade, hopefully to make it a little bit easier to remember. That word, if you can remember the word per decade, it's actually easier to remember. And the decade word for the children from 0 to 10, your children, maybe if you're like me, your grandchildren or great-grandchildren, aged 0 to 10 is security. What they really need is security. It's a desperate need. That comes from unconditional love, which gives them a feeling of life confidence. If you have unconditional love as a child, it gives you a feeling of life confidence. Now, there are three kinds of confidence. There's situational confidence, where you're in a given situation, you feel very confident, like if you're playing baseball and you're a baseball star. As long as you're playing baseball, you're confident. But when you get out of baseball, you don't feel quite as confident. That's situational confidence. And then there's life confidence, where it's like almost whatever life throws at you, you think, I can figure it out sooner or later. The third level is God confidence, where you get beyond your confidence level and get to God confidence. By loving children unconditionally, that's how we give them a sense of life confidence. And by teaching them about God is the way we give them a sense of God confidence and knowing where to turn when even your life confidence doesn't quite make it. Another thing is you want to tell your children, particularly of the same gender, men tell your children, women your sons, women tell your daughters, I love you and I'm proud of you. Children need to hear that. And you may say, well, I didn't ever hear that. You know what? A lot of men particularly didn't. I've heard that from a lot of men. My dad never told me he loved me, never told me he's proud of me. And there's a hunger in your heart to hear that. Some men in this room are in that exact position. But just because your dad didn't tell you doesn't mean you can't tell your son or grandson. And let me explain to you why your father didn't tell you he loved you or that he was proud of you. It was probably because his father did not tell him. If you look at, can I conceive of, can I imagine my grandfather telling my father that he loved him? No. It's like often we can't even imagine our grandfather saying something like that to our dads. And since our dad didn't say it to us, we feel like, how would we say that to our son? I say, your son needs to hear it. Your daughter needs to hear it. But it's a little different with daughters. They know you love them at a certain level. It's easier to say it, but men particularly. And remember this. The fourth grade, age 9, and I don't have time to unpack it right here, but age 9 is the single most shaping year of a human being's existence. I could spend an hour just on that. But whatever you do, if you have a 9-year-old, don't hesitate to get involved with their life. Don't say, I don't want to program their life. You're already programming their life, one way or the other. So why not program it in a good way? So there's going to be a fourth grade, there is a fourth grade video, I think, on the FOCLID website. Listen to it. It's very, very helpful. 0 to 10 is security. Those three things will be disproportionately helpful in establishing security. Teens, the S word is self. I, me, mine. If you're around kids much, around teenagers much, you know what I'm talking about. One of the things I tell teenagers whenever I get a chance is something that seems very counterintuitive to them at the time. I say, whatever you do, do not get married until you're at least 26 to 30. 26 to 30, are you kidding? I want to get married when I'm 16 or something, you know. But they say, why? I say, because you are changing so much between 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, that most of the marriage that I've seen with my children, that their friends go through, end in divorce before 30 if they got married before 26. Now, it doesn't always happen that way, but often it gives you a chance to really know who you are before you know who they are and you can get together permanently. That's what I tell teenagers a lot. Another thing is to get pre-marriage counseling before you get engaged. Not after you get engaged, but before you get married. Most people think, well, once I get engaged, we need some pre-marriage counseling. Too late. It's too late for objectivity. It's too late to really think about it. You're already feeling so much about ordering the gown it's like it's like there's no turning back, sort of. But if your son or daughter is in a relationship that's bad, I tell them this. Breaking a serious dating relationship is excruciating. I know that. It's excruciating. But it's easy compared to breaking an engagement. Breaking an engagement is excruciating. It's extremely difficult. But it's easy compared to breaking a marriage. And what's more, breaking a marriage is absolutely excruciating. But it's easy compared to breaking a marriage with children. I say, everywhere along that line it's excruciating, but the sooner you do it, the better, if you're going to do it at all. The quicker you do it, the easier it is, particularly when you're dating and you're engaged. Then the last thing is, in their 20s, they say, 20-year-olds have no idea how to save or make money, typically. And I say, whatever you do, listen to this lesson I learned way too late in life. Whatever you make in life, whatever your salary is, whatever your commission is, whatever your bonus is, decide on what percentage of that you'll put in the bank before you spend any of the rest of it. What percentage will I put in the bank? What percentage will I give the Lord's tithe? And I'll live on the rest of it, whatever that is. If you don't do that, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up living and giving God what's left and saving what's left, and there's never any. If you can teach a 20-something-year-old or a teenager something like that, it's much better off. And then another thing is to decide whether you're a goal setter or a problem solver or an opportunity seizer, if you can, even in your teenage years. Because by the time you're a teenager, you know, if I had my preference, would I set a goal, or would I solve a problem, or would I seize an opportunity? That's something for you to know about yourself as well as help them to know about them. Now in the 20s, the S word is survival. You may say, survival? I say, I deal a lot with 20-year-olds because they're the children of my wealthy clients. I've spent time with 20-year-olds from some of the best schools in the world. And when I mention the word, I say, do you know emotionally what I mean by the word survival? Oh, yes. Every single one said, oh, yes. They don't have a confidence they can survive in the adult world. They wonder, how do you survive? How do you go about buying a lawnmower or a laundry, a washer and dryer? How do you go about? I don't even know if I can do that. They're wondering, can they survive in the adult world? Just understand that is an emotional terror that they have. So you tell them, relax. No one is watching you or expecting you to change the world in your 20s. When they get out of school, people will say to them, what are you going to do now? You're out of school. They feel it's like someone putting a finger and saying, what are you going to do to change the world? And that's the way they feel. I don't know. I don't know. What am I going to do? It's like they feel tremendous pressure to do that. Help them with that. And assure them, this is not the decade when you're trying to decide what to do with your life. They think, well, I've got to decide what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to be a doctor, a lawyer, Indian chief. It's like, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. I tell them, relax. This isn't the decade you're supposed to figure out that. You're supposed to figure out this decade what not to do for the rest of your life. You're supposed to try it. If you like it, stay with it as long as you like it. If you don't like it, get out of it and try something else. Because you may think that what you're excited about now, you could care less about a year from now. And then I tell them this. I say, you know what? I deal with a lot of executives. And a lot of executives, now I'll tell some of you this to sort of, you'll feel relief from it too, is that a lot of people don't know what they want to do for the rest of their life. They don't know what their life work is till they're at least 35. You know what? A lot of them, maybe most of them, don't know till they're 40. You want to know the honest truth? Most people figure it out and change it finally by the time they're 50. Saying what you're trying to do if you're not 50 years old is just trying to figure out, what don't I not want to do with the rest of my life? You try it, you think, this isn't me. I say, relax. 20-year-old, relax. You're not supposed to try to figure out what you want to do the rest of your life quite yet. You can just feel them relaxing. You really can. And then in your 30s, the S word is success. In the 30s, you get a feeling that the person is what I call climbing the slippery pole. It's like there's a slippery greased pole and you're trying to climb it and can't get up it. It's like I want to try harder and harder and harder and have more and do more and be right. It's like how can I get? It's like pretty soon they're going just like this, and it's like they feel like they're getting nowhere. If that's you, you know what I mean. And so success is the focus of the 30s, but it's not achievable the way most 30-year-olds think of it. And I ask them, I say, do you know the feeling of climbing the slippery pole? Oh yeah. I say, do you have a good definition of success in your mind? Not really, I guess. It's like you never hear a good definition of success, really, one that they're prepared to discuss. And so I say, let me give you a definition. I said, would having a definition of success be helpful to you? Oh yeah. I say, first of all, you need to understand there is not anywhere in this world, a common understanding or a common defined benchmark for what success is. There just is not. You can't name one. I can't name one. It's like, I want to become a millionaire. Really? What's a millionaire? One who has $1 million cash and one who has $1 million net worth, who makes $1 million a year, makes $1 million a day. What's a millionaire? No one knows. And so you say, let me give you a definition of success. Success is simply a feeling. That's all it is. It's all it ever has been, all it ever will be. Success is simply a feeling. It's a feeling you get when you do what you set out to do. If you set out to make $1 million and only make $900,000, you feel like I've got a problem. They've got a problem because there's a distance between what I set out to do and I did. I say, really? You made $900,000 and you don't feel successful? Well, no, because I planned $1 million. Other people say, I only planned 90,000, I made 100. It was a great year. Other people say, well, I set out for 30, I made 31, it was a great year. I'm happy with what I did. The problem is not this problem, you also find that as you go, if you go every year with the same, what you want to do, pretty soon you're going to get bored with that. You say, I want to make 30 euros a year for, but the second year, making the same amount doesn't seem quite as exciting. But all happiness is the feeling you get when you do what you set out to do and you have what you want to have. That's it. And 30-year-olds feel, it's like I don't have to climb the slippery pole quite as hard. Another thing is learn to balance. Well, first of all, in the 30s, get a mentor. Whatever you do, find a mentor in your 30s. Because a mentor can give you mature perspective on that slippery pole. Get someone who is 50, 53, 55, somewhere in there, that has been through it, done it, seen it, experienced it, that can basically help you bring perspective to what you're dealing with. Another thing is to find out how to balance your personal life and your business life. That, I'm telling you, is a balance that people are trying to keep into their 90s. I'm saying that is a rough balance to keep, really. How much time do I spend with my business? How much do I spend with my family? How much is enough? What's too much? It's like that balance. In your 30s, you want to figure that out, but in your 30s, because you're trying so hard on a slippery pole, it's difficult to find the balance. But let me show you quickly how to find the balance. It's what I call the annual balance calendar. And it basically goes like this. It looks like a watch. But it's not a watch, it's actually a calendar. It's an annual calendar. It's not a yearly calendar, it's an annual calendar. And what it is, when is your birthday?
42 years.
No, I'm saying, what is your birth date? Is it January 3rd?
March.
March what?
10 March.
Okay, 10 March. Congratulations, that's my birthday as well. Okay, so you basically divide these into months, and every year at 10 March, you and I have a birthday. It has been ever since we were born, and it will be until we die. So every year, it isn't just what year is it? Is it 62, 82, 92? It isn't what year it is. It's every year at this time we have a birthday, right? Now, there's another phrase you need to really grab hold of hard, and that is, at this phase of my life. That's a really powerful concept. At this phase of my life, because at 20s is one phase, 30s another, 40s, 50s, 60s, at different phases. And also, by the way, do that with your company. We're just starting up, we're getting going, we've been here for 10 years, 15 years, 25 years. At this phase of our life, when you're planning your personal life or your organizational life, you start it with at this phase of life, what's realistic for us to do right now? So what you do, realizing that some things come around every year, you say, all right, what are the busy times a year? In a church, you say, well, till Christmas, a little over a month, 2 months before Christmas, it gets real busy planning the Christmas. And then before vacation Bible school, it gets here, and then here getting ready for this, and there are certain busy times, getting ready for Easter program, etc. Well, you don't plan family vacations right in here. You basically say, what are the slow times in our business, in our ministry? What are the times that are not as busy? Well, you plan your family vacations, your staff retreats, your board retreats. You plan the things that require time, just like you do your birthday. So every year at this time, we have our board retreats. Every year at this time, we take our family vacation. Every year at this time, but we don't during the busy season. And if you don't, you're going to find that balancing your life and your business is very difficult. And the other thing is this. The only reason you can't take a week of vacation next week, there's only one, that you didn't plan it a year ago and just stay with it. So to keep balance in your schedule, you basically plan it a year in advance. And you then put it on your yearly calendar for 2019. We're going to be busy here at church planning. We're going to take our vacation here. We're going to celebrate my birthday here for a week, right? And then we're going to, it's like these kind of things go onto your yearly calendar. And then at about November 15th, you tell your staff and your family and your staff, here are the actual dates on the calendar for next year. And you do it on a memo, and they think, boy, how organized is this person? And look at the balance they've got. And then the other thing is you say, at this phase of my life, how much time can we realistically take for family? You say, well, every Tuesday night, and every Thursday night, and every Saturday morning at this phase. Or you may say, at this phase, it's a different amount. But at this phase with the kids where they are, how much time can we take? So you get that, you just block those times out. You never cancel an appointment with your family or your staff. Now, you can reschedule it, but you don't cancel it. If you have a long weekend scheduled with your mate, you don't say, honey, something's come up. We've got a funeral in the church and I can't not be there. We're going to have to cancel our long weekend. No, you say we're going to have to reschedule our long weekend. Don't cancel family time, reschedule it. Okay, we can talk more about this in the Q&A, but that you basically have to figure out in your 30s, how do you keep that balance, or you're going to be struggling with it in your 90s. Okay. When you're 30s, your focus in your 30s is basically success. It's like it's hard driven to success. But between 37 and 43, you're typically beginning to move over toward, I know I'm successful, but is what we're doing significant? Is it making any difference? Are we just wasting our time? At which point, your 40s become a decade of searching for significance, making sure that what I'm doing is significant. The S word for 40s is significance/struggle. You're looking for significance, and between 40 and 45, you're typically saying, of all the things I do well, what do I do best? What's my single greatest strength? Because I've been trying a lot of things in my 30s, but what do I do best? Because that's what I want to make the most strategic, significant difference with. So you're trying to figure that out. But by 45, you're getting sort of exhausted, and you think 45 to 50, you're thinking, what can I stop doing? I've got to stop something. I'm going to burn myself out. Now, here's the alert, the bad news, the alert, the caution. Your 40s are the toughest decade of all, by far. I've asked a lot of people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, what was your toughest decade of all? They say, 40s. Because the success that you had in your 20s and 30s is beginning to catch up with you. You wanted to be a senior pastor, now you are one. And it's like every Sunday you have to have a sermon. The kids, you wanted to have kids when you're in your 20s and 30s, now you've got teenagers. You wanted to have one van at least by the time you're 20 or something. By 40s you got 3 vans and a car to keep up with all the kids that are going to baseball practice or soccer practice or something. In other words, all the things you've been trying to get to come together begin to come together when you're 40, but it begins to be an endless push on you, pull on you. It begins to be an endless sort of stress. Let me explain what stress is. Stress, 85% of stress or so is one of two things, indecision or lack of control. In your 40s, you have a lot of indecision. Should we or shouldn't we? What about the kids? Are we going to let them go to camp? Shouldn't we? We can't afford it, da-da-da. And you have a lot of lack of control. Things just get out of control in your 40s. One of the things that you have to understand as a woman in your 20s, or as your wife understand as a woman in her 40s, did I say 40s? Is that the 40s are simply a phase of life. Because it feels in your 40s like this is life. The rest of my life is going to be like this. And when you stop to realize it's just a phase of life, It's not life, the rest of life. It's a great relief. It's a great relief. And to realize in your 40s with your husband and wife, you know what? We're not supposed to be rich yet. It's a great relief. I tell them, look, if you can pay your mortgage, pay for the kids' soccer balls, and have $1 left over for their education in your 40s, you're in great shape. It's like you're not supposed to have it all together by your 40s. You're just not. It feels like you are, but you're not. Because, here's the because. The thing that's been sort of a relief to a lot of people is that the single most productive decade of your life is actually your 60s. By far. Think about the people you admire right now and how old are they? A lot of them are in their 60s. They're more productive, their churches are stronger, it's like they're in their 60s. I've worked with a lot of people like the Bill Brights, the Josh McDowells, the Adrian Rogers, the Jim Dobsons, and a lot of people like that. And I've watched them come up through their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. To a person, every single one of them, their 60s are their most productive decade. By far, not close, by far. The second decade of productivity is actually the 70s, health permitting. The third is the 50s. See what doesn't show up? The 40s. The 40s, you're just sort of trying to survive it, get the kids raised, it's like you're just trying to survive the 40s, really, at a certain level. And if you can get some ministry done, that's great. But don't feel too bad if you get your kids raised and off, and you keep your church in place, you don't have an affair or a heart attack. Congratulations, you passed your 40s. Because most men have affairs and heart attacks from 45 to 50. The stress gets so hard. I'm just saying, don't lose track of this. Now, when you hit your 50s, by the way, another thing in the 40s is to define your single greatest strength. To define your life work. You're beginning to try to define your life work. A lot of people in their 40s say, Bob, I've got a question for you. I'm not sure if it's a professional question, a career question, a job. I'm not sure what it is. I say, I think the word your instincts are looking for is the word life work. That's it. That's it. That's what I've been looking for is my life work. I say your life work is simply what you could see yourself doing for a profession the rest of your life. Or they're paying you for what you'd do if they didn't pay you. It's like, yeah, I found it. This is what I'd do if no one paid me. This is my life work. So keep trying to define that. Often in your 40s, it isn't quite clear till you get in your 50s. But keep thinking about, could I see myself doing this the rest of my life? And then the other thing is just to absolutely remember, your 40s are a phase of life. Now, is this making sense to any of you yet? Yeah. I mean, it's like this. I've talked to so many hundreds and I've talked to about 5,000 people one-to-one in the last 42 years. Met with about 500 different companies and talked to about 5,000 people. You know what? These are things I've seen over and over and over and over again. The struggles and the opportunities and the focuses and the concerns it's like these are just very familiar patterns. Okay, when you hit your 50s, the S word is stride. Watch my hand here. In your 40s, sometimes life feels like this. Up and down, discouraged and encouraged, up and down. When you hit your 50s, it begins to go like this. There's still ups and downs, but it isn't anything like the 40s. When you hit your 50s, it's like it just sort of levels out a lot. However, from 50 to 53, I've yet to talk to a person that didn't feel old on certain days. If anyone's 50 to 53, I would ask them, there are certain days when you just feel old? Oh, yeah. And you know what I found is that I believe the reason that people feel old are a couple of reasons. Number one, they're tired out from the 40s. And the basic reason is they've divided life into 0 to 100. And they've looked at it this way. I'm going to go to 50, and and then it's on the back hill side of 50 down to 100. Sort of like they divide the years of their life into half of their life is now over. And it feels like, oh, my life is half over and I haven't even done it yet. You know, I haven't even gotten where I want to go yet. It's like I feel old. I don't have the energy to do it, but I just feel old. I say everyone feels old from 50 to 53. Everyone. But what you want to see is that your 50s are the final decade to get ready to absolutely maximize your 60s and your 70s. And then, but when people see this, they say, you've just given me a second half of life because I've been feeling over the hill. I've been feeling on the way down. I've been feeling discouraged and depressed. I say, no, you're just getting ready to maximize your 60s. That's what you're really getting ready for. I would also say that for those of you looking to hire a pastor, looking to hire a professor, looking to hire anyone on your team, you know what, from my perspective, a really good age is 50 to 53. That is a sweet spot of target to hire a senior executive. You may say, well, why? Because look, you're through the turbulent 40s, and you've got your 50s, 60s, and 70s to go. You're hiring 28 to 30 years of productive work from a person who has gone through a lot of experience to get to where they're going. And they know who they are, they know where they're going. It's just a very good age. If you can see it as, I'm now getting ready for my 60s instead of I'm over the hill and I'm discouraged. Okay? So in your 50s, you don't want to feel old. Be sure you become a mentor. I define mentoring ideally a mentor is one who helps their protege, ideally is one who helps their protege realize her or his God-given potential. That's what a mentor is. And you want to ask yourself, who do I see has potential? Who do I believe in? Who do I have a relationship with that I'd like to be friends for a long time? That I feel that who I am could be helpful to them. I want you to imagine something it's hard for you to imagine, and that is in 1946, you go back to 1946, which is before most of you were born, and you're driving through Tupelo, Mississippi. And you stop by this little Church of God choir, and on a Sunday night, and here's a junior high choir doing their best to sound good. And you listen, and sure enough, there's a little boy in there that sounds great. And so you go up afterwards and you ask choir director, did you hear that little boy back there? He has a great voice. You should let him stand out. Oh no, we treat everyone the same. It's like, no, everybody has to be treated the same. I say, no, you don't hear me. That little boy is exceptional. He said, oh no, I can't let him sing solos or anything. I say, sir, do you understand that boy's name is Elvis Presley? And someday, he will sell more albums worldwide than anyone but a group out of England called the Beatles. Now the question. Who is the Elvis in your choir? An interesting question. I say you want to ask yourself quite often, particularly in your 50s, who is the Elvis or Elvises in my choir? That may not come along at all unless I see their potential, come along beside them and help them grow into their potential. I say, in your 50s, but in your 30s and 40s as well, ask, who are the Elvises and how can I come alongside them? Another thing to do in your 50s is to make a list of your life milestones. What I mean by that is, I would encourage you to go back and make a chart with about, say, 10 rows in it. And then from 0 to 10 is the first row, right? And you basically ask yourself, what are the milestones I passed when I was 0 to 10 years old? They can be positive, things you got done. You're an Eagle Scout or whatever it is that you did, or you helped your grandmother across the street. It doesn't have to be big or public or anything. But what did you do that was right in the 0 to 10? And then with the negatives all through here, what lessons did I learn? I would encourage you to take a couple hours in a retreat setting and do this sometime soon. To make a list of all the milestones, what I call life milestones, you can remember having since you're a little child. Now, why? I'm going to tell you another thing that's probably counterintuitive for you. But I've proven it in my own life and a lot of other lives. You can count on this. When you're discouraged or depressed, don't keep looking forward. Look backward. It goes like this. If you're climbing a mountain that's, say, 10,000, what would it be, meters high, and you're up to only 1,000 meters, and you're up 1,000 meters, but your legs feel like lead. And it's like you just feel, I'm not sure I can go anymore at all. But if someone comes along and says, you can do it, we only got 9,000 to go, you can, I say, you just get exhausted and overwhelmed, just say, I can't do it. But what if you say, take a break and just sit here for a little bit and look back on how far we've come. Look what the valley looks like. All of a sudden you say, hey, it is pretty up here. This is nice. This is nice. I'm glad we came. I think maybe I'm ready to go again. And you go up another 2,000 feet, but then you get exhausted again, you look back, and it looks even better from 2,000 feet. I'm saying whenever you've got anyone on your staff, in your family, anywhere you know, your mom, your dad, anyone, your senior pastor, your pastoral staff, anyone you know that you feel is discouraged, stop with them and help them look back. What in the last 6 months, what have we done right? What's gone right at the church? Well, it's an encouraging look at what's happened. I'm saying in your 50s, it is a great time to look back over your entire life so far. It is a great time up here to look back over 50 years and see how far you've come. Your life list of milestones. In your 60s, the word is strategic. This is the decade where you begin feeling like many of your parents, maybe in their 60s, they begin feeling like they don't have the natural energy they used to have. And they don't. They're not 35 anymore. But they think, I'm 60, 63, whatever. I don't have the energy I used to have, but life keeps coming, the end keeps coming at me. The days I've got left are shorter and shorter. So therefore, I better make the very most of every single day I have available left in this life. So we began thinking very strategically. What are the most important things I can do? And we began thinking very strategically. And a lot of people in their 60s, we can help them think more strategically. But basically, it is a strategic decade. And again, people in their 40s are trying to raise the teenagers. People in their 60s typically are empty nesters. People in their 40s are trying to say, where do we get $1 to finish the month? And people in their 60s are often saving for a retirement, or they've got extra funds. And 60s is a very totally different phase of life than the 40s. So basically ask yourself, how can I make the most strategic, significant difference in my entire lifetime right now? That's what's happening right there. And what I found is, again, that I was with Bill Bright on his 65th birthday. And at that time, they were still in San Bernardino, for those of you who are familiar with Crusade at all, which means they were still in their old headquarters. Their annual budget for Crusade was $102 million for their worldwide program. By the time Bill was 75 or so, their budget was $350 million, and their headquarters was in Orlando. In other words, it was like at his 65th birthday they were here, and at his 75th birthday they were like up here somewhere. I had breakfast with Jim Dobson when he was or lunch when he was about 65-ish, and he said, Bob, it feels like my team has finally come together. You know what? If you're 30, you're not supposed to have your team all together quite yet. You'll still be trying to experiment with people that don't work out to find the one or two people that do you can grow old with. Your 60s are your most productive decade of all. Gail Sheehy, a few years ago, wrote a book where she said, today's 30-year-olds are approximately as mature as our generation was at 20. I found that as our children came up, my daughter's now 52, my son is now 48, as they came up through, I found that to be true with them and their friends. When they turned 30, it was like they're ready to get married. But up until then, they wanted to play games. But she said on the other end of it, today's 75-year-old is approximately as tired as their dads were and moms were at 65. I found that to be true as well. I'm 75 today, and I have a lot of friends that are about my age. And it's like the people I've worked with, like I say, a lot of them still have the energy that a lot of people wish they had at 65. But the doctors we've had available, the vitamins, I don't know what it is, but for whatever it is, your 60s are a very productive decade, and some of the best ideas I've ever had have come in the last 2 years. I say your 70s are a productive decade as well. Not quite as productive as the 60s, perhaps, but very productive still. Your 70s, the minute you turn 70, and I've watched this happen over and over, the minute your parents or your grandparents or whoever it is you're watching, the minute they turn 70, they will become nearly obsessed with succession. Because they've been building a church, but now who's going to take it over? They've been building a business, but now who's going to take it over? Is any leader in place ready? Is anyone, will they bring the same values and the same beliefs? And it's like, are they ready? What if I die and no one's ready? And is it going to go back in the ground? It's like they become obsessed with succession. So if you've got a parent or grandparent or neighbor or someone in the church, the board in your church, and they're 70, don't be surprised when they're obsessed with succession. In your 70s, write out your memories and advice for the next 10 generations of your family. Let me ask you a question. By the way, you've got this outline in your app. You understand that, right? I assume you're following along the outline. Let me ask you this question. If you had a book that was handwritten by your ancestors, let's call it 5 or maybe 10 generations ago, coming from some other country, but you had it in your possession, would you read it at least once? Is there anyone in here that would say, no, I wouldn't read it? No, everyone would read it at least once, maybe not twice, but you'd read it at least once, right? If you could read the language. But you'd read it at least once. You know what? 10 generations from now, your family will read whatever you write. And what if it has the plan of salvation in it? No matter how liberal or how pagan your family becomes, they will read what Grandpa so-and-so said 10 generations ago about finding God. I'm saying in your 70s, don't forget to do that. Matter of fact, in case you get hit by a truck, do it whenever you can. But I'm saying at least by your 70s, don't forget that possibility. Don't forget that insight, that reality. Don't forget that reality that 10 generations from now, your family will still be reading what you write in hand. If they can even read handwritten stuff and it's not in the computer, they can't read it. Maybe there's no even writing, they just listen to everything or something, I don't know. Keep mentoring. Then along come the 80s. Are you all familiar with black ice? You know what black ice is? Where it's ice, but it looks like the pavement is dry. It's like frozen water on blacktop, black ice. That's what your grandparents are feeling when they're 80 years old. They feel like they're walking on black ice. You walk down the street at 10 miles an hour or jog down at 10 miles an hour or something, but they're looking at it like, is that black ice or is that pavement? And let me tell you, it's like they feel their health isn't predictable. They feel like a lot of my friends are dying. A lot of my friends are younger than me, have already died. And it's like their health becomes a real concern. It's like on black ice. It's not predictable. That what's going to happen next month isn't quite as predictable when you're 80 years old. So I'm saying be aware of that with the neighbor you have next door or something. That feeling of life being slippery a little bit. You can't predict what you're going to step on. And use that to talk to them, perhaps. Health is not predictable. Often finances feel somewhat slippery. Often an 80-year-old says, you know what? We didn't set enough aside. We just kept spending or kept giving or kept something, and we don't have enough money. And I say often that's the case with 80-year-olds worldwide, let alone in a poor economy. And then the 90s is sleep. You may say, well, you mean they sleep all the time? I say no. Cheryl's mother died last year at, was it 97, honey? My dad passed away at 92 last year. So we've spent a lot of time between us with 90-year-olds in the last 10 years, 10 years. I think every single one of them I can remember at some point talked about sleep in the way I'm going to tell you. They say, you know, Bob, I'd just like to go to sleep and not wake up. I don't want to lay here in a bed sick like my mother did or my dad did. Or it's like they don't want to grow old sick and with cancer filled and laying in bed and can't walk and can't get up. Their hope is that they will go to sleep and wake up in heaven with their friends and spouses and stuff. I'm saying sleep isn't a preoccupation with a 90-year-old. Just be aware of that when you go to visit your grandpa or your grandma. Now, I'm going to read you something else, if I can. And it's basically to give you a sensitivity regardless of your culture. To 90-year-olds, and a lot of times our culture has taught us, particularly in America, particularly the South, we call everyone Ms. and Mrs., Ms. and Mr. We don't call any older person by their first name. We just don't. I think that's wrong. Let me try to read you something called Minnie Remembers. Said, God, my hands are old. I never said that out loud before, but they are. I was so proud of them once. They were soft, like the velvet smoothness of a firm, ripe peach. Now, the softness is no more, like worn-out sheets or withered leaves. When did these slender, graceful hands become gnarled, shrunken claws? When, God? They lie here in my lap, naked reminders of this worn-out body they have served me so well. How long has it been since someone touched me? 20 years? 20 years I've been a widow? Respected, smiled at, but never touched. Never held so close that loneliness was blotted out. I remember how my mother used to hold me, God. When I was hurt, in spirit or flesh, she would gather me close, stroke my silky hair, and caress my back with her warm hands. Oh God, I'm so lonely. I remember the first boy that ever kissed me. We were both so new at that. The taste of young lips and popcorn and the feeling inside mysteries to come. I remember Hank and the babies. How else can I remember them but together? Out of the fumbling, awkward attempts of new lovers came the babies. And as they grew, so did we. And God Hank didn't seem to mind if my body thickened and faded a little. He still loved it and touched it, and we didn't mind if we were no longer beautiful. It felt so good, and the children hugged me a lot. Oh God, I know. God, why didn't we raise the children to be silly and affectionate, as well as dignified and proper? You see, they do their duty. They drive up in their fine cars. They come to my room. They pay their respects. They chatter lightly and reminisce. But they don't touch me. They call me mom or mother or grandma, never Minnie. My mother called me Minnie, so did my friends. Hank called me Minnie, too. But they're gone, and so is Minnie. Only grandma is here. And God, she's lonely. I say, I listen. Every time I meet an older person, I listen, remembering this. I listen very carefully to what they ask me to call. They, oh, just call me Joe. I don't care if he has 3 doctorates from Princeton, Harvard, and Cambridge. I don't care where his doctorate is from. I don't care how many millions he's got. He says, call me Joe. I call him Joe. If she says, call me Bertha, I call her Bertha. I don't care if she's the Queen of England. I don't care if she's the Queen of where. I say, I don't care what they are or who they are, or, how important they are in public. I call them whatever they ask me to call them. And I try to hug them hard without hurting their frail bodies. But I just hug them tenderly like a child. And I say, don't forget, 90s really need you. They really need us. I say your grandparents need you, and your parents need you in those phases. But again, they're hoping at that phase. It's shocking how many of them at that phase would rather die. They really would. Now, Mary said, listen up and listen in. I say, when I talked about your decade, I hope it was helpful. When you talked about the other decades, I hope that was helpful as well. So this will give you a feel for what to look forward to in the next 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And when you're in your 40s and you just feel like you can't hang on anymore, realize it will change. That'll pass. And be able to encourage your mates, your friends, your neighbors. Just be an encouragement by giving them perspective on who they are and, in fact, where they are in this process of getting ready to go to heaven.